Good morning in Oldish land. How are you today? We're coming to you from a very snowy southwestern Ontario. Winter is hanging on. I wish it would go away, but it is what it is. My name is Karen Brown. I'm so happy that you all took the time to join us today. I'm the editor and publisher of the Oldish, and I am your host today. We're going to talk this week about articles that we published on the Oldish this past week. We're going to take a look at news around the world, and our Let's Talk segment this week is going to be all about retirement. As we come up on the summer, there are a lot of people who are looking to retire, so we thought we'd give you a few questions to mull over with yourself and your significant other, just to see if you're ready. So this week on the Oldish, let's put our little sign up there. This week on the Oldish, Chapter 18 from A.J. Jones was published this week. For those of you who have not yet read the series, A.J. Jones is writing to us about a dementia journey she's on with her mother. And we're up to Chapter 18 now, so it has been quite the journey, and at sometimes heartwarming and at other times heart-wrenching. So that's a series that many of you will relate to, so give that a read. How will the treating doctor know your end-of-life wishes? Well, this is really interesting because, we can do the directives for health, but what if you land in the ER and the doctor that you're dealing with has never met you before, doesn't know your wishes? You're unconscious. Maybe your family isn't right there. Maybe they are geographically at some distance from you. How will the treating doctor actually know what you want? Interesting. Healthier grilling options for barbecue season. I keep waiting to get out to my barbecue. I have shoveled the snow off of my barbecue deck and I am ready to go. But Mother Nature doesn't seem to want me there. But the grilling options actually can be very healthy, and they don't take that much more time, if at all, than throwing a burger on there. We've talked many times before about the healthy eating option for an aging senior being something that is a cross between a Mediterranean diet and a DASH diet. And this article, when I read it, actually reminded me of exactly that space that we all want to be in to eat healthy. Hearing loss may increase accident and injury risk. If you can't hear what's going on around you, how do you know what's coming at you? Or if somebody says, look out. I was talking to a colleague at the end of last week. His aging father lives with he and his wife and their family, and the father refuses to acknowledge that he has an issue with deafness. So consequently, everything in the house is turned up loud so that he can hear it, and it's causing some consternation. So that's an interesting article to read. Arthritis linked with increased risk for depression. That doesn't surprise me at all. The pain that goes along with arthritis reminds me of chronic pain. And chronic pain is something that can lead to depression and social withdrawal, polypharmacy. Certainly we've talked a lot about polypharmacy here on this show and on our website as well as our Facebook page. So arthritis is something that has been linked through studies now. We know this, and it means that you have some good information that you can take to your doctor. So give that a read. Unretirement catching on among seniors leaving the workforce. Are we surprised? We're going to talk about that a little later. I took a look at the most popular articles over all time, ever since we started the Oldish. So this is on the oldish.com. Just out of curiosity, and I thought you might be interested in knowing too. When I look at these statistics around Christmas time, the most popular article is always gifts for aging seniors. That has topped our popularity list for years and years and years, and it is the same now. But it's in second place at the moment because the number one article is why a senior may not be bathing. Really? Why a senior may not be bathing? I think a lot of people may be having some issues with some of their seniors around this particular topic. I know I wrote an article, this goes back quite a ways, about why old people smell. There is actually a scientific reason for it, and that may play into why a senior may not be bathing. That's interesting. So why a senior may not be bathing is number one. Number two is gifts for aging seniors. Mother's Day is coming. And number three, anti-inflammatory diet for arthritis. People are looking for ways to deal with their arthritis. That's interesting. Over the past 30 days, the popularity of articles changes just a wee bit. The number one article over the last 30 days is knitting staves off dementia and calms anxiety. The second most popular over the last 30 days, seniors top the list for car crash fatalities. That caused quite a bit of conversation on our Facebook page, but I'm not surprised that people are still reading it. And the third most popular, chicken shots for knee pain. I see this coming up in our daily articles being read all the time. Chicken shots for knee pain. Interesting. Okay, so let's talk about retirement or unretirement. 65 comes and you get the golden handshake and the watch, and then what? You wake up the next morning and you have nothing to do? Or you have something to do, but the thrill of going out golfing every day may wane for some of us. Not for everybody, I understand. Golf fanatics are golf fanatics. But the article that we published about unretirement this week says that up to 40% of workers who had already retired got bored and went back to work. They took less demanding jobs with more flexible hours, less stress. Social interaction was high on their list of things that they missed, and so they looked for that in the jobs that they took. We already know that having nothing to do and sitting around is bad for your health. Watching TV, not moving, it's all bad. It's particularly bad for people whose identity was tied to their careers. Men, I'm looking at you because it is a more dominant factor in men than it is with women. I wonder if that has something to do with the fact that for women, they don't regard their retirement as being totally retired. And as sexist as it sounds, it is probably because the dishes still have to be washed, the meals still have to be made, the laundry still has to be done. And it is true that for the most part, women do that. Not always, but for the most part, women do that. And so in a very real sense, women never retire. Men, on the other hand, do. They go to their 9-to-5 jobs, and one day they're there and the next day they're at home with no structure. So a study in France looked at 500,000 self-employed workers and found that continuing to work past retirement age keeps the brain sharp and may lower the risk for dementia. Well, we knew that. StatsCan, so here in Canada, says that more than half of workers 55 years of age and older will return to work. They don't say whether it's part-time or full-time. Maybe their wives are just finding that their husbands are driving them crazy. I'm not really quite sure. In my community, most of the volunteers are older adults, and organizations that depend on aging seniors, older adults for their volunteers may find themselves in some dire straits in the years ahead. We'll see. But let's look at whether or not your marriage or partnership is ready and prepared for full-time togetherness. Here are some questions to discuss with yourself or with that loved one across the breakfast table. What common interests can we devote to time as a couple? That's actually pretty interesting because, when couples first get together, they spend a lot of time together. And then the family comes along and you're more devoted to the family than you perhaps are to one another and your date nights. And then the kids leave and you look at each other and wonder who that person is. So what common interests can we devote to time as a couple is a good question. But you also need time apart, so what separate interests can we pursue individually? Are all of our friends couples? Are some single by choice or through being widowed? And how do we see ourselves interacting with them? Sometimes couples are a little leery to bring a single person into their social group. How will household chores be divided? This is the time to sit down with that man who never did any chores and ask him how often he wants to cook supper. How much time does each person need to themselves, and how will that be organized? That's actually a very good question, because as much as we need time together to bond and grow as a couple, even if you've been married for 50 or 60 years, you still have growing to do. Everybody needs time to themselves. Are there places in your house or apartment that are his, hers, and theirs together? And how will that change once everybody's retired? Income typically reorganizes at retirement. So how will the financial change impact the power balance in marriage? That's an interesting one too, because very often the person who earns the most has more power in the marriage and somehow ends up having the final word on decisions. And when that power balance changes, it can cause some issues. So you might want to talk about that. Are there organizations with goals and a culture that align with your thinking that could use each person's skill set on a voluntary basis? So is there a board that you sit on? Would you like to volunteer with Boy Scouts or Girl Guides? Would you like to be more active in your church's board? I sit on our hospital's board, and that's something that gives me a great deal of satisfaction. Are there skills or hobbies you've always wanted to learn and never had time for? That could be interesting. When my children went away to school, I picked up a camera and I started taking lessons on photography. Eventually, people in the community saw me shooting around and started hiring me for things. Now I actually have a studio. We're sitting in it right now. I do video here, I do photography here, and I work here as well for the Oldish. So, I describe this as my hobby gone wild, the photography piece, not the Oldish. But it really is. It is my hobby gone wild, and I don't get very much time to pursue it, but it is still something that brings me a lot of satisfaction. The same could be true for you. Does your spiritual thinking give you support in times of transition? Very good question. You do need support because your life is going to change fairly dramatically. So how are you going to find those supports? Maybe there's something in your community that could give you that support. Maybe your workplace, if it's large enough, offers you that transitional support. How much time do we currently devote to sedentary activities, like watching TV or reading? And how will that change when you have all the time in the world to do what you want? Do you think you're going to spend just as much time sitting there watching TV? That's a bad thing. Don't think that. Are there walking groups or golfing, curling, swimming, or skiing groups that you could join to get that social engagement and be more active? Keep your eye open. In the next day or two, there's going to be an article on the oldish.com that talks about swimming being perhaps the best exercise that an older adult can do. Are there groups that meet to play cards or darts that would provide a less active but still social experience for you? Do you have grandchildren nearby? Do your children have expectations that now that you're retired, you're going to be their daycare provider? Remember, we did an article on this before. One day is a really good thing for the psychological and emotional well-being of an aging adult. 5 days may send you to your doctor to get some prescriptions for depression. So a little bit is a good thing, a lot not so much. Those are some questions that we thought of that you could look at as you're preparing perhaps to retire. Around the world with the Oldish, there are some interesting articles that we found this week, doing a bit of an internet search. Cardiologist Dr. Ben Levine has said that seniors are shocked, absolutely shocked, by the changes that are made with regular exercise. Regular cardio in our 50s or 60s tends to give us a heart that is similar to that of a 30 or a 40-year-old. That's enough to get me back on the treadmill. I've been pretty good with that lately, but still, that's actually really good to be able to strengthen your heart by doing some extra exercise. Muscles and joints can be improved in the same way. The arthritic pain of osteoarthritis can be reduced by up to 35% with regular exercise. Imagine that. We talked about arthritis before, and the research article that I was reading about this said that many people don't exercise in a particular way because it hurts. And the thinking of the research article was that it hurts because you don't do it. So even though it hurts, you should do it because it will reduce the pain. Something you should maybe look into and discuss with your doctor. Wellness is taking over our thoughts. When we think of engagement with our healthcare team, the National Council of Aging reports that seniors want a more consistent relationship with their healthcare providers. They want to feel more empowered, and they want to see them about getting and staying healthy. They don't want to go there just when they're sick. They want to figure out how to stay healthy so that they don't see them when they're sick. The same study shows that seniors believe technology will improve healthcare by improving diagnosis, curing disease, and helping doctors to predict diseases and conditions before they happen. One of the key areas of interest to seniors was electronic record keeping so that medical records can be shared and they don't have to constantly repeat themselves, doctor to doctor to doctor. That's something that a lot of hospitals are dealing with right now because some hospitals have different electronic record keeping systems than others, and at least in Ontario there has been no standard set by the government, so we'll see where that goes. We reported last week on the Ontario Wynne government's plan to introduce pharmacare for seniors. At the same time, south of the border, Trump wants to lower drug prices for seniors, but retired pharmacist Bryn Stiles of Barrie, Ontario, has said that seniors don't need this kind of help. The taxpayer can't afford that kind of program, and the cost of pharmaceuticals should be geared to income. What do you think about that? Did you know that Walmart is the 4th largest pharmacy in the U.S. after CVS, Walgreens, and Express Scripts? Walmart does, and they're now incorporating wellness centers and primary care clinics in their stores so that you can get your checkup, walk a few feet and get your prescriptions, and then go shopping in their fruits and veggie department for all of your healthy food, all within their 4 walls. You know, these conglomerates are kind of taking over the world, aren't they? Walmart is doing this. Amazon is taking over a lot of things as well. You hear about them in the news almost every day. Now, this is interesting. How would you like a robot to look after you in your long-term care facility? Does that sound a little creepy to you? Well, in Japan, Nagano University Hospital and Toyota Industries of the same company that makes cars, have developed a squad of robots that can deliver medicine and test samples around a hospital. They have a robot named Palro that can carry on conversations on a simple level, but still, it can guide residents through a facility on a little bit of a tour. He has a buddy named Paro, who is specifically built to look after residents with Alzheimer's. And there is still another robot whose name is Robert. I think if you say that French, it sounds a little bit better. Robert. But it's spelled R-O-B-E-A-R. Robert is a robot that can lift a patient from a bed to a wheelchair or help them stand up. What do you think about that? Would you like to have a robot lift you up out of bed? Might be a little creepy. Okay. Well, that's it. That's all from around the world of the Oldish this week. I will put our little logo up here so that you know where to find us. All of our articles can be accessed on theoldish.com. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as @theoldish. So I hope that you'll join us on whatever platform makes you happy, but all of the articles that are published almost on a daily basis can be found at theoldish.com. We will look forward to seeing you next week for our regular weekly Oldish Live. And until then, please remember that it does indeed take a village to age a senior. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.